Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about the 20 chess mistakes that everybody should know. So after I read this list of 20 mistakes, the goal is to make sure that you don't make those chess mistakes ever in your games. The first mistake involves neglecting the king's safety. If you neglect your king's safety and leave your king exposed, that'll be really easy for your opponent to checkmate your king, or at least, very least, to make sure that it's in danger and hamper your sense of development and harmony. Overlooking threats. If you basically miss your opponent's threats and tactical opportunities, they're going to be having really bad positions, even not just losing, then that'll be not a good, doable way to play the game of chess. Inaccurate calculations. So if you misjudge variations and don't calculate moves thoroughly and deep enough, then you'll find yourself in a very bad position and you don't know why, because you did not take the time to judge every single possibility in the best way that you can. Ignoring opponent's plans. If you're not paying attention to your opponent's strategic ideas, then you'll be left with a bad position, even a losing position where you have a checkmate that is not stoppable. Sometimes you want to have a moment to take a breath and look at what your opponent did last move at the very least, so that way you can save yourself from having a very losing position. Exchanging pieces without purpose. This is a game of chess, not a game of checkers. So making unnecessary piece exchanges can harm your position in the worst way possible. So make sure that you don't trade pieces because you can. You want to trade pieces with purpose and not doing it mindlessly. Neglecting endgame knowledge. There's a ton of really strong chess players that are really good at tactics, but they don't care to study at all endgame knowledge, because they think that if they just beat the opponent before the endgame begins, then they're all set. They don't need to study the endgames at all. But it's a really great mistake. Sometimes you get in a position that you don't have any choice but go into the chess endgames, where you're left with nothing to say for yourself and you lose. Horizontal blindness is very common for not just beginner players but amateur players too, that they're having tunnel vision and looking at attack but no end of the opponent's ideas on the other side of the board, the hemisphere, where they can actually be sidelined because of the sideways attack horizontally. Overlooking checks and captures. It's very commonplace if you go outside of puzzle solving chess that you overlook at a real game simple checks and captures, forcing moves that opportunity just goes against you and you lose the game because you don't look at all the checks and captures during the game. So always make sure you don't overlook checks and captures. Copying openings blindly. If you're one of those players that memorize openings really thoroughly, really deeply, but you don't understand the underlying ideas behind them, then that is a really bad trap for yourself. So it's really important that it's a real race in chess. Openings go to the middle games you want to go into. Also, the middle games to go to the end games you want to do at the very end of the day. So for myself, I tell myself that I want to do no advantage openings, but I get to real games that I really like and have every idea I want to do whatever happens in the game. So I have a psychological advantage all the time. So in my sense, that you can do opening theory memorization, but understand the underlying ideas behind the middle games that you get at the end of the day. Overvaluing material. Sometimes people think like an engine in the sense that they think that if they're up by material or rook up, they can turn their brain off and the game plays itself and they win the game automatically. But that's not the case. The game is more deep and more in depth, more thorough than that. There's things like initiative, also weaknesses, and it doesn't matter if you're up a rook or two queens actually, but if you get back right checkmate, the game is over and your opponent wins, not you. Excessive pawn moves. If you make too many pawn moves and you weaken up your pawn structure and yourself, and this is really helping your opponent to win the game, not actually pushing your pawns to actually get a passed pawn, but rather your king will be in the trenches to lose the game. Not adapting to the current position. A lot of beginners fail to adjust and adapt to the current position, whether it's closed or open, and there's a specific playing style for each one. So, for example, if it's an open position, beginners tend to have long maneuvering, slow games, which is not really the case. You want to be sharp, tactical, and aim for the initiative, and don't be lagging behind. Whereas the contrast, if you have a closed position, people want to look for tactics, breakthroughs, sacrifice a knight and a rook, and a bishop and everything to have open positions still, but it's really losing material for no good reason. And don't attack and just doing really quick things where you don't be prepared enough. Next one is called ignoring tempos. So it's very important that you consider the importance of gaining and losing tempos. So sometimes if you do a move that's aggressive, but you lose time or tempos in the very end, this is really not worth this like ghost attack, because at the very end of the day, you're going to be losing tempos and time for no good reason. So make sure you consider not ignoring tempos. Next is not evaluating imbalances. So if you fail to assess the imbalances in the position, material, pawn structures, etc., then you'll be having a hard time to, number one, creating a plan based on the imbalances, what you just strive for as a goal, and what you need to take care of for weaknesses you have because you have a disadvantage of some aspect or imbalance in the game. So it's crucially important that you don't ignore the evaluation of imbalances. Mistake number 15 is rushing to attack. A lot of people, especially young people, try to attack prematurely without preparation of support or development. With this, it ultimately usually loses attack steam, tempos, and initiative, which is really bad to do in the game of chess. So avoid doing this, and actually the good rule of thumb is you want to make sure that you have your rooks connected before you attack. So if you don't do this, you want to be really cautious of attacking before that is ready. Failure to recognize weaknesses. If you do not identify and exploit the weaknesses in your opponent's position, then you'll be really flailing and missing basically the mark, and you have lost your opportunity to actually win something crucial, because time is of the essence usually, because temporary things like initiative will not be lasting forever. You have to make sure that you recognize the weaknesses and exploit them as fast as possible. Overlooking the back rank weaknesses. It doesn't matter ultimately if you have a queen and 2 rooks extra, and all that matters is the king's safety at the end of the day, because if you have a back rank issue, it only takes a weak back rank in your camp to lose the game. And make sure that is not a factor in any of your games. You can do something like lift to make sure you have the king to be able to escape a check of the back rank, or other pieces that can defend the back rank. Make sure you don't neglect this part. Neglecting initiative. If you fail to seize the initiative and basically dictate the pace of the game, then your opponent will aggressive initiative from you and do the same thing to you, and that'll be really hard to play at the back foot, and you don't have a control or say which this game is going to be going for your advantage or theirs. They're going to be choosing it for themselves, not you. Next is inadequate awareness of past pawns. I had a game recently where I failed to recognize the control of past pawns to make sure they don't go too far, especially their connected past pawns, and there's no way, even though I had much material to give away, there's not enough to stop the rampaging pawns from making 2 queens. Don't take lightly the past pawn and how far they go and how fast they are ultimately. The last mistake is not evaluating exchanges. This is a very common thing for beginners, because if you take something, then you have to do that. But it's not the case in chess. It's not like checkers. You have a choice. You can take the thing or do something else. So you want to make sure you evaluate piece exchanges effectively, because some pieces are not equally valued to others. So, for example, the knights are not equally as valuable as other knights because they're knights. The same piece type is not the truth. And also the bishops, the rooks, and the queens are pawns. You don't trade because you can, we trade because it benefits us. Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chest to the next level.